Hamad, welcome to CNBC. It's great to have you.
Good morning. It's fantastic being here. Thank you for having me.
Long time coming, so it's great to have the opportunity to talk with you.
Absolutely right.
So talk me through what we've seen today. Just how significant is this IPO for, first of all, Dewa, but also for Dubai?
It's quite significant. If you look at the size of the IPO, we're speaking about the UAE's largest IPO today. We're speaking about the region's second largest IPO. And for us to start the program, since it was announced by the leadership of the city, to start with the biggest listing and with such a massive success, which has seen 3.37 times oversubscription, is something that gives quite a lot of momentum to other discussions we're having on the market. It also reflects the confidence that investors have on the market, be it local liquidity or international liquidity, that we ended up attracting to the exchange. This is testament to how good and to the infrastructure and the connectivity of the capital markets, and to the confidence to Dubai overall, specifically around that renewed confidence post COVID-19.
And what did you make of the first trade today? Double-digit upside. What do you think it reflects?
It reflects the demand. I think if we go back and look at the initial launch of the transaction, it was launched at 6.5%. The intended free float was 6.5%. If we look at the money that was on the table, 315, that means that IPO, before increasing it to 18%, was 107 times oversubscribed. That is a reflection of a massive demand. The issuer then decided to increase that tranche to 18%, which was then 37% oversubscribed. When you see figures of oversubscription such as that, it's a reflection that you'll see demand on the secondary market, and that's what we're seeing today. The Dewa as a company is a very good company. It's one of the most reputable companies in the portfolio of the Dubai government. It's well managed, it's well run. This is not their first capital market transaction they do on the market. The dividend yield that was announced is fantastic, so it's an amazing investment opportunity for quite a lot of investors. So it was, to us, there's no surprise that we've seen this performance from Dewa.
And the company said 65,000 investors took part, local, regional and international.
Correct.
Hamad, can you give us any insight into the composition of those investors? Where did this demand actually come from?
The demand came from all over, but in terms of the final allocation and in terms of how it happened, this is disclosed, this is public information. There's quite a lot of allocation to the UAE investors. 75% came from the UAE investors, and the 25% was regional and international demand. That will of course change on the secondary market as trading ends up opening.
Okay, what can you tell us about the other IPOs that are now in the pipeline? We've heard about 10 possible companies coming to market here.
Correct.
What is that going to look like?
Yeah, I'll take you back to November announcements in terms of what the government announced. There are three major announcements that took place. The first being that we will unlock, 2022 is a year where we will unlock the equity market, and the government is taking the lead in that space by bringing 10 IPOs. 4 were announced. Dewa was the first one. Salek, T-Com and Empower were other stories that were announced as part of that. That's the first tranche, and I'll come back to that in a bit. The second segment was supporting the ecosystem, the wider ecosystem. So the government's not looking only at the exchanges and the IPOs. We're looking at bringing up and upgrading the wider ecosystem. The starting point in that space is market making. And the government took initiative by allocating a fund of 2 billion to support the market making on Dubai markets, which we've seen the impact of that on the market in terms of uplifting the ecosystem, the wider ecosystem. We've seen the other part of the ecosystem. This is one of the first IPOs in the region where subscription was entirely electronic. Investors didn't need to physically walk into a location for them to invest. That's the part of the ecosystem. The third element is regulatory unlocks, making sure that we're aligning our regulatory framework to international best practices. Factors such as ESG are extremely important for us. We already have the regional head start when it comes to ESG. In terms of the ESG assets listed, Dubai is number 1 today. We have approximately 12.9 billion worth of ESG assets listed with us. We're one of the first exchanges to collaborate with regional as well as international parties to launch an ESG framework, which is work in progress. We're working with quite a lot of market participants to make sure that we align that and calibrate it to where the world is headed toward. So those are main unlocks that the government had announced. I'll now move back to the IPO side. Of the 10 that the government will provide us, we are confident they're beyond the 4 that are announced. They're fantastic stories. They're crown jewel assets of the Dubai government. But the part that we as an exchange and capital markets are focused on is benefiting from that diversity and the concentration and economic composition of Dubai. If you look at the GDP of Dubai, it's well diversified. Today, we don't have a risk of concentration when it comes to the GDP itself. The opportunity we have is to take that and reflect it on the market today. And so, therefore, private sector is extremely important for us. We've launched an incentive program as the DFM, the Dubai Financial Market, to take on part of the cost of companies, private companies, coming to the market. After the announcement of the program, and especially after the performance of Dewa IPO, we've seen quite a lot of private sector companies accelerate their discussions with us. So there is massive growth when it comes to the pipeline from different sectors, and a few of those sectors are not represented on the market. In terms of timeline, we leave it to the companies. We want the companies to be ready for them to come to the market. The support system is something that we put in place to make sure that these companies that are taking into the market are well supported, well guided, and well serviced into their IPO journey.
Why is now the right time, though? Because I guess the criticism is that Dubai is a little late to the party here. We've already seen significant IPOs taking place down the road in Abu Dhabi and across the border in Saudi Arabia. How can you compete with those two major capital markets?
I think overall, when you see what we've seen, the shift we've seen in the region is a move from the fixed income mindset toward an equity mindset, which is fantastic for Dubai. Typically, whenever we see growth of and demand on either fixed income or equity, Dubai ends up servicing quite a lot of those IPOs, regardless of whether those IPOs are taking place in Dubai or outside Dubai. The IFC plays a major role. The concentration of financial services companies in the IFC plays a major role in servicing the entire region rather than just Dubai. So overall, at the macro level for Dubai, the fact that the region is taking into IPOs is a fantastic thing for us.
So if that's the case, why do you think Dubai has underperformed peers in Abu Dhabi and in Riyadh?
I think in terms of the IPOs, we were slightly delayed in terms of coming into the overall program. If we go back and we start looking at the markets and the composition of the markets, we had done over the past 2 years, we outperformed everyone when it comes to the fixed income side of it. The equity was something that required an unlock, and that's why the government put a strategy together and started that unlock process with 10 listings. In terms of the long game, the end game part of it, we're confident that Dubai has the ability to outperform. The reason we're confident about that is today we have the highest concentration of private sector anywhere in the entire Middle East and North Africa, and that gives quite a lot of strength and backing to IPOs and the stories that are IPOable in terms of the market. The second thing, we've proven the model over the past 60 years that Dubai has this ability to attract content from the region into Dubai, and the same can definitely be replicated into the IPO. The third element is we have the strongest support system that can support these IPOs both on the primary as well as on the secondary. We have the region's leading financial center. We have one of the most diversified ecosystems when it comes to the economy, and we have one of the most diversified intellectual capital in the city. So we think it's not too late. We think the time is right, coming out of COVID with such a strong performance when it comes to the economy. Expo is fantastic for us. There is quite a lot of visibility and demand in Dubai overall as an economy. That's why we come to this from a positive point of view, that we have an opportunity. There's quite a lot of success that can be mirrored when it comes to the capital market, and that's what we intend to do.
And don't take this in the wrong way, but can the international investment community trust what happens here in Dubai? Because this is an emirate and a country where a phone call can change anything.
I think today for us we are a global city, and we're fully aware of the responsibility that comes with that. So for us, making sure that we remain one of the top cities globally and one of the most desirable cities globally is at our top priority. Part of the initiatives that we had unlocked is the formation of a committee that will ensure that governance of listed companies and governance overall in the city when it comes to the capital markets is well followed. The leadership is absolutely clear in terms of making sure that we are on par with international regulations when it comes to governance and transparency, and the markets are geared up toward that.
One question that often comes to mind when we talk about capital markets in the UAE broadly is consolidation. This has long been rumoured for a very long time.
Popular question.
It's a popular question. Where are we at on the consolidation narrative here? Is it likely that we're going to see these major exchanges coming together in the future, or is this separate exchange strategy still the best way forward?
I think if you look at in a way, there is overall alignment in terms of the two major cities, Abu Dhabi and Dubai, understanding the importance of financial services and the capital markets. And
because that's how you improve liquidity, right?
There are a number of things that you need when it comes to the market. So I think what we could agree on is that today there is unanimous agreement that capital markets are very important to the economy of the UAE, regardless of whether it's Abu Dhabi or it's Dubai. And we've seen ADX take steps. We're taking very active steps when it comes to that. The strategy we put together as DFM is a very simple strategy, and that strategy is in principle and not in content. The approach is, our strategy is relevant whether we're one exchange in UAE or whether we're multiple exchanges in UAE. And the decision for consolidation, we leave it to the shareholders and to the decision makers for them to decide. That's the stance that we've taken. We see the benefits of that consolidation, but most importantly, what we see today is that the two jurisdictions, the country realizing how key the capital market is for the next stage of the economic growth of UAE, and there is quite good alignment when it comes to that space.
Do you think a consolidated exchange would better help the UAE compete with friendly regional rivals like Saudi Arabia, for example?
I think in a way we end up complementing each other. I think one way we look at it, we don't look at it as a competition, we look at it as a race. And that race needs to be supported by a number of important ingredients, one of it being the underlying economy itself. For us, the way we look at our economy is that we are a multinational economy in Dubai. We're a global economy today, so we're not entirely dependent on the local content. We are keen on the local content, but there is quite a lot of visibility that Dubai has in other jurisdictions. And I think what we've seen during COVID is quite a big shift in terms of regional hubs that were the go-to places in the past, and the role has slightly diminished, and that gives Dubai a major opportunity. And that's our end game for us, is to play truly a global role when it comes to being a hub for financial services.
And just finally, how are you eyeing the economic trajectory, the economic outlook from here? Dubai's had a great story coming out of COVID. What's the biggest risk to the outlook in your view?
I think when we look at, I'll change the question and talk about what's the biggest opportunity that we have today. I think one way to look at COVID is that COVID was this situation where every government around the world was given one challenge at the very same time. Historically, we've never had a situation like that. And the agility of UAE government had proved that the system works. We were able to gauge the situation on the ground and adjust accordingly. There were two priorities that were executed quite well. The first being making sure that people are safe and they feel safe. They're two separate things. Sometimes you might be safe, but you don't feel safe. That was well managed. That's the first part. The second part is making sure that businesses continue and that Objective 1 and Objective 2 don't conflict with each other. And that created a massive success for Dubai in terms of how well it was managed. The other advantage is businesses that took to Dubai during COVID ended up seeing a major benefit, that when you're in Dubai, you wake up early morning, you cover Asia, before you go to bed, you're covering Mexico. In a truly digital world, that's a massive advantage in a jurisdiction that you decide to choose as a headquarter. Add to that the population composition of Dubai. For us, we take pride that we have over 192 different nationalities that consider Dubai home. That's a big advantage for us. The talent composition in Dubai is the biggest relative to all other neighboring cities and jurisdictions. That's the opportunity we have. And that's what we aim to capitalize on, not only on the capital market side of things, but also on the wider economy. Take all of those ingredients and channel it toward innovation.
That's the opportunity. What about the risks?
There are always risks. I think one of the things we look at is globally today there is a major competition for talent. The ability to attract talent is one of our major focus areas, and that's what we're focused on, to make sure that we continue to support the city when it comes to fantastic talent composition that it has today.
Hamad, we'll leave it there. Thanks for speaking with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.